Witchcraft is irritating and for feminist gossips. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and I have had the usually unfortunate experience of knowing several people who identify as witches over the years. And no, it is not cool and glamorous like American Horror Story Season 3. It's usually a bit more like Dakota, the gender terrorist. My sister actually used to identify as a witch and maybe still does, and she's a lot older than me. I believe she was identifying as a witch in the 1980s through the 1990s when I was just a wee little prince. Now granted, I'm not really talking about her necessarily when I speak about self-identified witches in this video, as I have known dozens more. I first want to make it clear that I think that there are some interesting things associated with witchcraft. I cannot be bothered to actually do a Google search and go down some sort of Tumblr rabbit hole in order to refresh my memory about all the things that quote-unquote witches and covens actually do with their time, though. The only thing I'll mention in this video that I kind of enjoy is tarot, because it is fun and tarot decks are rather interesting and can give you some cool insights about your life, even if it turns out that they are just an elaborate way to tell stories based on random card selections, which they probably are. Still, people who say that they are witches generally get really wacky, and more so, they become really gossipy. And they are generally feminists. And feminism and gossip are practically synonymous. So if you ever meet somebody who identifies as a feminist witch, run. You see, people who consider themselves witches often form quote-unquote covens, which are basically just groups of feminists who try to manipulate reality from the privacy of their own homes, which I obviously do because I make YouTube videos, but whatever. And while I don't know for certain, like 100%, that none of their magical powers are real, I do know that they are mostly extremely bitter, spiteful, and generally delusional people. So we can assume their covens are basically a clubhouse for losers that are angry at the world and seek revenge through imaginary spells and curses. So think about this. Assuming that the vast majority of these covens have no abilities at all, no magical abilities going on in the witch clubhouse, and that they are mostly feminists due to the historic notion that witches were magically powerful women who sort of defied the patriarchy or whatever, what really goes on at their coven meetings? I think it's safe to assume that they mostly just sit around talking trash about the people who have done them wrong. Presumably, they are mostly talking trash about men. Sure, they might have yoinked a piece of somebody's hair, and I have even heard stories of women saving condoms full of jizz so they can put curses on guys that they fucked for whatever reason. But considering they don't actually have any magical powers, they are just sitting around being creepy and weird. And usually probably lying to their stupid friends about how awful this guy supposedly is anyway, under the guise that this is what covens do, and that they are somehow smashing the patriarchy by placing an imaginary curse on some guy because he cheated on one of the quote-unquote witches or something. I believe they really think in their head that they are doing something noble and edgy, but really they're just being gossipy idiots. And if anything bad happens to the guy that they're putting this curse on, it's simply because a bunch of people spent an entire evening talking trash about him, half of which is probably untrue because feminists lie so goddamn much. And so eventually this gossip will probably spread outside of their little coven, because it's not like they are actually secretive, because they aren't actually witches. And eventually that gossip will harm the guy's life, because that's how gossip works. So I have news for you if you think you are a witch. You're almost definitely not magical. You're probably not special. And you aren't even doing anything particularly inventive, because this trend happened in the 90s. And they made a movie about it called The Craft, which was actually kind of good, and a show called Charmed, which I personally could not ever really get into. No, you're not a witch. You're just a spiteful gossip who enjoys trying to ruin people's lives by spreading rumors about them with a club of people who thrive on spreading rumors to feel powerful. And half of the rumors probably aren't even true. Drop me a comment and stay tuned.